Good. That's okay.
Text her back.
Or not the good doctor, the other one.
This probably won't be an hour and a half.
Oh, so you clearly have, you take pictures?
Oh, that,
Yeah.
we signed in with them.
On my doctor's report. Oh, that's good. Get your shit ready for the spring, buddy, on the back.
One or 2 minutes. There's a sign in the back.
Oh, there she is.
I think she would be a little. All right, it's 2:30.
All right, it's 2:30, we're gonna get started. First off, I just wanna thank you guys for coming. Today we're gonna talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and really focus on biases and microaggressions. Just so you know, there might be some sensitive things talked about here. I encourage you guys to open up and talk. If there's any questions that we can't answer, we'll get you the resources that can help you answer those. Otherwise, we'll get started. So some participant expectations are, I want you to challenge respectively. Just make sure that, we're sharing well, we're asking questions, make sure you're being present. I don't want to be on the phone or anything like that. And then what we talk about here stays here, the Vegas rules. So some of the objectives are, we're going to understand the importance of intent versus impact, define what microaggression is and identify where they occur. We're going to become more aware of our blind spots and just the different types of biases, and then employ strategies to interrupt microaggressions. So, have you ever experienced an unintended consequence when communicating something, or somebody reacted in a way that you didn't anticipate them to based off something that you said? Looking at you, man.
Well, the answer is yes.
Anybody have?
Does anyone want to share?
Anybody have an example? This is open for discussion. Come on, you guys aren't quiet.
Is this with patients or like with staff?
Anywhere.
Anything.
Anything in your life, yeah. That and your dog.
All right, well, if nobody's willing to share, I know
I
Debbie
have
does
one.
have a.
So I've been a nurse for like ever. And when I started, I worked in an ICU at the old memorial, and we did PACU at night. So I was doing this PACU on this person, and this woman came in scrubs, and I assumed she was the nurse, and it was Dr. Abbott's. Well, she told me very quickly she was not the nurse, but that was my assumption because she was female. And this is a long time ago, but still, it shouldn't have been. I felt bad.
Did she ever name
So now does anybody have any examples they'd like to share? The point is that it happens to absolutely every single one of us. We're all human, we're all gonna step in it from time to time. And that's what we're gonna learn today, is when we do, what we can do to recover. But even what we can do ahead of, just to educate ourselves so that it doesn't happen quite as often.
So psychological safety. So this is the feeling of sense of belonging. People want to feel that they're safe when they're in our environment. Gives them the ability to speak up, to pose new ideas and learn from their experiences. And this is kind of, I feel, really important because this is kind of, I feel like the culture that we have. I feel, and it's, all of those things just make us feel that we can speak up and really feel that we can share those experiences and really all learn from them. So I think it's super important to make sure that we are developing that safe place for everybody. So why diversity, equity, and inclusion matters: better health outcomes, stronger relationships, with peers, with our patients, with our community members, anybody that we're really kind of coming in contact with. Higher workforce engagement, there's greater innovations, positive organizational reputation, and increased revenue and market share. And then it also helps us achieve all of our strategic goals that we want to achieve. The code of conduct is the building of the culture and trust that is needed to help people live well. Our purpose and values are foundational to who we are. We do not tolerate any racism, discrimination, or any form, and that includes inside and outside the workplace. When you are outside the workplace, you are an advocate or a member as well. So be very cautious when posting things on social media and that kind of thing. Inappropriate team member conduct will be investigated and corrective action may be taken if warranted. And just remember, yearly we do take that competency on the code of conduct. Any questions on that? All right, so this slide here just talks about what is diversity. Diversity is the fact. It's what makes our team members, our patients, and our consumers unique. Inclusion is the action. It's us seeking out those that are different to learn about them and to empower them. And then equity is the commitment to close those two gaps.
So understanding biases. So what's a bias? So this is a video we're gonna watch.
Are you seriously considering her as a candidate?
Don't trust
She's a
her.
woman.
She's a
This is a
woman.
man's job. She's clearly not
Really?
educated.
Does she even speak English?
That's not me. I'm not like that. You call it an honest mistake. Science calls it a blind spot. Our unconscious mind is a mysterious and powerful thing. It makes 90% of our decisions without us even knowing it. Our brains are overloaded with 11 million pieces of information every second. Yet we can only process about 40 of them. So we're wired to make cognitive shortcuts, using past experiences to make assumptions. And you know what happens when we assume. Our unconscious mind can put us on autopilot, determining where we sit, who we eat lunch with, who we turn to for advice, and who we choose to offer a helping hand. Living our lives with blind spots can put us in a tunnel. Same point of view, same decisions, same outcomes. We can find ourselves trapped in the land of snap judgments and misconceptions. We've all been on both the giving and receiving end of blind spots. Think about it. Who's talented? Who's able? Who can I trust? Who belongs? We've all been there. Blind spots are part of the human condition. Our choices have consequences for us and the people we interact with. By accepting that blind spots exist, we can stop. Imagine what possibilities exist if we could do it all over again. Different perspectives, inclusive relationships, diverse networks, better outcomes, seeing people for who they really are. People like you, with unlimited potential. We all have blind spots. Once you accept that you have them, you can choose to do something about it. It's time to check your blind spots and focus on what's possible.
All right, the definition of bias. So it's prejudice in favor of or against one thing, person, or group compared with another, and usually in a way that's considered to be unfair. Does anyone have an example of a bias? I have another. So it's like saying girls aren't good at math, just assuming that we're, you know, if you're female, you're not good at math. And I have another one. So the only good cat is a dead cat. It's a bias. You like cats?
It's a curveball.
Unconscious bias versus conscious bias. So conscious bias, we can see it, right? So we're aware of it, it's visible, it can be assessed, we know it. An unconscious bias, these are a little trickier and they're dangerous because they're operating outside of our awareness and control. And it's difficult to assess or be aware of it, and it influences our actions more than a conscious bias. So that might be things like gender bias. Maybe when I go to lunchroom, I always sit with a female. Or maybe it's ageism, that I only identify with people of my age group. I don't identify with the younger person or older person. So these are hard. And how can biases impact our patient care? Does anyone have an example of this?
You guys are too quiet.
I can think of one in PACU, and for some people it might sound really silly, but we do these name badges for kids, and people are always like, oh, that's a girl, you need to pick, why did you pick blue? And I'm like, because she's blue. But I think that's or a sticker, well, that's a truck, but we'd always, you know what I mean? Like,
Girls can like
It's a
trucks,
really
and
good
boys
example.
can like
Yeah, that is a good
cows, and
example.
it's okay.
Yeah.
right? My own personal one is when I pick up a patient and maybe identify with that patient because maybe we're of the same age, or, you know, just where we're located demographically, physically. I'm pretty much chatty Cathy. If anyone knows me, I can talk to anybody about anything forever, right? So I'm very chatty, go back to the OR. If somebody I pick up is different for me and I feel that, I'm just always weighing what I'm saying. I'm just really, really careful that I don't say the wrong thing and offend them. So unfortunately, I'm very quiet. So maybe that's a good thing, but I feel like I need to improve there. That's something I can do better at. So I can, you know, chit chat with those people too, or people that I just make me feel a little like they're different than me, and that's okay. But so that's my bias.
Anyone else have anything else?
So common forms of unconscious bias. I think this is you, Pam.
It is. Yes. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Pam Gibb. I'm the Human Resource Director here, and I'm partnering with these lovely ladies on delivering this content to everyone in surgical services. I do also want to express my thanks to you guys for attending. I want to thank Kelly and Debbie and Renee and the rest of the surgical services team for their courage in stepping forward and kicking this off with all of you. So, common forms of unconscious bias. There's a lot of different types of unconscious bias. These are the four most common types that we see. The first being confirmation bias. So, when a person looks or only sees information that supports a bias or a stereotype. So I have an idea, and if I'm writing a report on it, for instance, so back to my academic days, and if I'm only researching and only looking for literature that only supports what my idea is and totally ignoring other literature that may support an opposing viewpoint. Groupthink bias, and that's agreeing with the consensus to fit in with the group, and I think that's something that we see quite often because we may not necessarily feel comfortable speaking out against maybe what the group seems to be moving towards or agreeing on. And that's kind of around psychological safety, and that's why we want to create a psychologically safe workplace so that people with differing ideas, thoughts, experiences, backgrounds have a comfort level in coming forward and raising their hand and saying, you know, maybe we need to think about this as well. Rush to solve bias, when people hurry to make decisions because of limited time, outside pressure, or budgetary constraints. So we need a new piece of equipment, we need it now. We may have multiple different vendors we can choose from, but we're just going with this one because we're familiar with them, and we know they can get it to us fast, rather than looking at, well, maybe we have a vendor who is female owned or who is owned by a racially diverse individual. So going with, you know, rushing to solve the situation rather than really taking our time. And then the halo effect bias, and that occurs when someone has an affinity for a coworker or someone else because they can relate to them. And the reason for that can be unknown. I think Debbie's example is a really good one. She's comfortable making small talk with people that she feels she can relate to because she can see that she's got something in common with them. if you go to the next slide, you can take a look at what some solutions to some of these forms of biases are. So with confirmation, it's having a healthy skepticism as part of your decision making. And I would say with all of these, it's really just slowing down, taking your time. It kind of ties into our, shoot, I'm spacing on from my initiatives, and my phones are going off, but making sure that we're connecting with, if it's another department or another part of the hospital or even another facility, making sure that you're bringing everyone in so that you're getting those differing viewpoints. And the same with, it's kind of the same with the groupthink, creating an inclusive work environment, making sure that everybody is feeling comfortable sharing what they have to share, being welcoming of new ideas and promoting openness to contrary beliefs and viewpoints. Rush to solve, and that's just simply slow down. Take a moment to visualize your decision when acting, and sometimes it's, kind of thinking it through, like that whole cycle of, okay, if we do this, this is how it's gonna impact us, but looking a little bit farther, how is it gonna impact the next department and the next department? And then maybe bringing those individuals into the conversation. And then with the halo effect bias, this example is kind of related to leaders and asking their go-to person who they would recommend for that next task and find out why. Sometimes with leaders, and it could be definitely an unconscious bias, and they're aware of that as well. They've got their go-to people that, they rely on for certain things. Maybe it's, stopping, it's like, okay, I'm gonna ask them, instead of asking them to do that, I'm gonna ask them who they think would be a good individual or team member to ask and find out why, so that we're sharing the wealth and so that nobody is feeling like they're not getting the same opportunities. And why should we care about this? We need to care about this because there is a lot of research, and it's up here on the screen, on how different groups of individuals, different demographics are perceived differently with regard to the care that they get. So research supports a relationship between patient care and physician bias in ways that could perpetuate healthcare disparities. What makes implicit or unconscious bias frightening in health and healthcare is that the result is unthinking discrimination of which caregivers are not aware. In the United States, 4% of physicians are Black, 6% are Latinx. Studies show that even they hold anti-Black biases, including the belief that Blacks have a higher tolerance for pain, resulting in physicians not believing them when they seek treatment. So the point behind this particular statistic is it's not just white physicians that are biased in this way, it's persons of color as well, which could be related to how they were trained or what they learned in medical school. The Joint Commission keeps statistics on this as well. Non-white patients receive fewer cardiovascular interventions and fewer renal transplants. Black women are more likely to die after being diagnosed with breast cancer. Non-white patients are less likely to be prescribed pain meds, non-narcotic and narcotic. Black men are less likely to receive chemotherapy and radiation therapy for prostate cancer, and patients of color are more likely to be blamed for being too passive about their health care. And then the next slide is Wisconsin specific. I found this on the 2019 Wisconsin Health Disparities Report. So American Indian, Alaskan Native children had much lower childhood vaccination rates. Asian Pacific Islander adults had much lower rates of breast and colorectal cancer screening. Black children had much lower childhood immunization rates, while Black adults had much lower attainment of recommended weight and blood pressure control, and Black adults who had diabetes or heart disease were much less likely to be tobacco-free. Hispanic and Latino adults had much lower attainment of recommended weight loss, and those with diabetes had much lower blood sugar control, and white adolescents had much lower HPV vaccine rates, and white adults had much lower attainment of recommended wage. So biases can occur in any racial group. We certainly don't want to be contributing to this, and that's why this is really important that we think about what our biases might be, and ensure that we're not acting on them consciously.
So just think about it, kind of like we talked about, our brain is taking all these shortcuts, and we're trying to assume good intent, we're making assumptions, and because of that, this may lead to hurt feelings because we may say the wrong thing, or we may not provide care in a way that we normally would, or it may cause us to act in a way that normally we wouldn't have. Kind of like Debbie gave the example of not feeling real comfortable with somebody who maybe is not like her. So just really kind of imagine those possibilities and just really be cognizant of how that affects it.
So on to microaggressions. So does anyone know what a microaggression is? It's this really scary kind of look inside. Bothers me. This line just bothers me. So I'm just gonna pass on through this. The person has a lot of faces. So this is Dr. Winsu's definition of a microaggression. But I'm gonna take it to the next slide because this, to me, this breaks it all down. So it's everyday slights, a statement, a question, action, or incident that has a hidden message as well. In the next few slides, we're going to have some examples of microaggressions. So if these examples bother you in any way, because it's kind of at you or someone that you love, it's okay to step away. We're fine with that if you need to leave. So here's some examples, and there's some really interesting ones out there.
I'm interested in hearing if any of you have heard any of these.
I know, can I touch your hair? I just bothered me, like, who says that? You're pretty in an exotic way.
I've seen that in PACU.
Can I touch your hair?
Really?
They don't ask because they're asleep, which is worse. Yeah.
You don't look gay?
Oh, I've heard that too.
You're
And
Asian.
I've heard
Why aren't you good at math?
How about your name is too hard to pronounce? Can I just call you John?
Uh-huh.
You know, we have a lot of team members with what we may consider difficult to pronounce names. We don't just assign nicknames to people. It's important to ask them, and even if we have to ask them a few times, how do you say your name again? I think it's okay. People want to be called by their preferred name, and they may have a nickname that they go by, and I think typically when somebody does, they let us know that. I was made aware of a situation where a team member decided they were just gonna call somebody else by a different name, and that's just completely inappropriate.
Oh. What did I do? I have to click through, sorry. I don't know what happened there. First timer. Look how fast we go.
Where are we?
We are past here, past this, here we go. These are microaggressions with consideration to the LGBTQ and religious differences. Oh wait, I'm backing up one, I'm on the wrong slide. There's same one. So these were things that were actually said within AAH. So saying to someone who's bisexual or pansexual, saying, you're just confused. Or automatically assuming a person is straight by asking, do you have a husband or a boyfriend? Rather than saying, do you have a significant other or a spouse or a partner? Or I've never guessed you're a lesbian or gay. And to a transgender woman, women have uteruses. Again, these were actually said somewhere. To a transgender man or woman, are you post-op? And refusing to educate yourself on what's the most current form of technology and saying, well, I can't be politically correct all the time, it's just too much work, I'm gonna call you what I want to call you. Or for the religious side, if you have a patient with who is Jehovah's Witness and they refuse any blood products, and it may affect, it might actually cause them to die, and just not being accepting of that. And then the best one is at the last election, it was heard in the break room oh, your family is here legally? So microaggressions related to weight, calling someone brave for wearing a certain outfit, giving unsolicited dieting and exercise advice, or on the other hand too, if you're eating a sandwich, you need to eat a sandwich. You're so skinny you might blow away. I mean, that might be for somebody really difficult. And also talking about a patient's BMI. And in this respect, I know those in surgery probably know this was new to me, but Michelle used to, on the surgery board where our patients go past, Michelle used to write BMI on the board, and that was an indication that you might want to use a Zoom cart to pick up the patient because, to protect our backs, that's all it was. And she realized that patients can see that when they go past, and they know what BMI is. So she changed the words to Zoom. So now the patient has no idea what Zoom means, but it's for us to say, you might want to take a Zoom cart with you on this patient. So I think that was a really good example of what she did. Microaggressions related to gender is telling a woman to smile more, or calling a female colleague bossy, or saying she's being dramatic when she expresses emotion. Or here's me, assuming the female colleagues are nurses and not, sorry.
I think we have some patients that probably still do that.
Or assuming all males are the doctor, right?
Yeah.
For that. And then remember, it's not just our intention, it's also our impact. So this cute little cartoon, like I ran over this guy's foot. I didn't mean to, but it still happened. So again, intent versus impact, what we can do. So others can't see our intentions, so it's your behavior that really makes this better. So empathize. You made a mistake, right? So empathize with the person and respect that they may have a different perspective to the situation, and openly discuss what your original intention is and recognize how that didn't really come across how you wanted it to. And of course, you acknowledge your error and you apologize. And you say, I really didn't mean to make you feel bad, I'm really sorry. And just taking away that you'll learn from that experience and try in the next time you encounter that it'll hopefully go a little better. And then microaggressions and the messages that they send. So on the left column, it's different themes. So for color blindness, is saying, when I look at you, I don't see color. There's only one race, it's the human race. Criminal assumptions of criminal status is where a store owner would only follow around a black person, or a white woman or man clutches their purse or belongings when the person of color approaches. Crossing a road, crossing the other side of the street because you're afraid of that person. And the denial of individualism, of racism, sexism, is saying, I'm not homophobic, my friend is gay. Well, that doesn't make you anything. A white person to a person of color is, are you sure you were being followed in the store? They never followed me there. So it's just recognizing that we all come from different backgrounds. The impact of microaggressions, what happens? It's proven that it's the impact on health and well-being. There's more stress, mental health, physical health, and chronic conditions. Your energy and passion is driven away from work, and instead it's spent on surviving the environment. It neutralizes the value of power, because obviously if we're all in the same boat, we won't have a lot of creativity, but it's what makes us diverse is what makes us beautiful, right? Because we all come from different backgrounds, we have more to give to the pie. Impairs performance and creates perceptions. And the last one is really important, because I really feel that it makes belonging impossible. If you're not accepted, you can never belong to the group. And how do you want to come to work? My favorite slide, death by 1,000 paper cuts. Because if you're told over and over and over again that you're not worthy and you don't belong, you're going to start to believe it. I feel like green.
Yeah, so when you're the target of these microaggressions, we really want you to be able to seek out your leader at the table. We want you to be able to seek any kind of clinical advice. If you feel like you need to have a trusted peer, a friend, a lead, anybody, please reach out to them. We really want you to really care for yourself and take that time to manage your emotions. practice health sleeping habits and self-care strategies such as mindfulness meditation.
We got you, Pam.
All right, so I have an example.
You ready?
I'm ready, you can put that right straight up.
Again, content alert.
Yes, there is a content alert on this, although there were two scenarios to choose from. We chose the less alarming one. So I'm gonna read through this scenario, and what I'm gonna ask from you guys to do is share what you would do as an ally. So we're kind of leading into allyship and standing up for each other. And then I'm gonna share with you what the outcome of this particular situation was. You can go ahead and put that up, Debbie, and I'll read it because I know that's probably a bit of an eye chart. This did happen in Aurora, I don't know what facility. In a department, nurses, techs, and physicians worked closely together. The department was very collegial. The day of the Capitol riots, there was a discussion about the destruction being caused. The doctor asked an African-American tech if she was afraid to drive home. She didn't feel like he asked out of concern for her safety. He did not ask anyone else in the room, and no one else in the room was African American. A nurse said to the tech that she could stay with her if she ever felt unsafe. That made the tech feel good, as she has always been sweet and kind, and she knew that the nurse was being genuine. The physician's comment made her uncomfortable. A separate time, the physician was asking everyone in the room, again, there was a nurse, there was the doctor himself or herself and the tech, if they were fully vaccinated. All stated that they were, except the African-American tech. When she said no, and this was pre-mandate, so she said no, because at that time she wasn't. The physician asked her why. She told him that she didn't feel comfortable getting it right now. The physician then went on to say that he was just in the OR talking to two other African-American team members and asked if she knew them. She did not. However, he then asked her why she thought they weren't getting the shot. She said she can't speak for them, but she herself is not comfortable. His questioning made her uncomfortable. The physician only asked her, and now others in the room were looking at her. No one else in the room was African American. She felt singled out. She continued to work and just tried to brush it off. So what I'd like to hear from you guys is, if you were in that room witnessing this interaction, what would you do as an ally for this African American tech?
Well, maybe if you were a person that didn't feel comfortable getting the vaccine and you're not a person of color, then you could say, I myself don't feel comfortable getting it.
Yep.
So you have just equaled yourself
Right.
to her, so she doesn't feel so.
Yeah.
There's so much at play here, because there's a power over move too with this position.
Bingo, that is
So-
exactly it. Yeah, there is definitely power dynamic
Yeah.
going on, right? And that does make it very difficult. So the outcome, so this physician actually made an aggressive comment, and I don't know if it was towards the same person, if it was a different person, I don't have the information on that. But because of this aggressive comment that was brought to the attention of leadership, a whole investigation ensued. And through that investigation, these two situations came about when they spoke to this particular team member. So when the physician realized this, he was apologetic, surprised that his behavior was offensive to the team member. He thought he could just ask her questions and did not know it was offensive. He wished she would have said something to him, not being aware of the power gradient. He took an educational course to learn about microaggressions and has scheduled follow-ups with his leader on how his behavior is changing because of his education and continuing learning on the topic. The incidents were documented with a copy of the letter in his medical staff file. So, as an example, this is how serious we do take these situations.
Are our providers getting the same education?
They do get this education in different formats. I know, because they don't report to Renee, so she couldn't, require them to attend. However, we are gonna have a conversation with Dr. Bote to see how we might be able to roll this out with the physician group. So our call to action is we really do need more allies. We need to all elevate our behaviors and support one another to create a more inclusive environment. You know, in that first situation, the tech felt really good about how the RN, you know, kind of spoke up and said, you know, if you ever feel uncomfortable, you can stay at my house. And that made her feel really supportive. So that was how she was able to be an ally. So it's a lot of times it's just speaking up on behalf. So that's what we're gonna roll into now. I think I am still correct. Nope.
I can go to
You can go.
Yeah, so being an
Awesome.
ally equals being courageous. So just to kind of give you, next slide. So just the definitions, an ally is someone that's kind of like your helper person, the one that's gonna kind of support you, and just kind of really that good person, right? And then we have the upstander, and that's the person that speaks up. They'll intervene if they need to, when the other person's being attacked or being bullied. And then in contrast to that, we do have the bystanders, the person that just sits there and does nothing and kind of lets them take the heat of that. So really want to encourage everybody to be an ally and upstander and really help support all of our coworkers. There is a document in the back, you guys can feel free to grab that. If you want to be an ally and not really sure what you should say or how you should approach certain situations, so please know that that resource is available to you in the back.
It's really, really a lot of words.
I think it's helpful.
It's very helpful, but you can kind of digest it.
Yeah.
So why should you interrupt a microaggression? So there's two reasons, right? So the first reason is you're educating the offender. You're stopping it and you're saying, hey, you know, do you realize what you just said there is, that's not okay. And you're maybe encouraging them to change their behavior, and you're setting the bar that says, no, we're not going below here, this is not us, we're not like that. You're also, you know, obviously helping out the person who's offended, because they might feel too uncomfortable. I think a lot of people, if you're offended, if somebody says something blatant about you, or you take it that personal, I think a lot of us would just be like you don't know what to say, because you don't even think that it happened. So, you know, you can probably see that when something happens to someone, so be that ally, you know, stand up. An ally is being an action, it's a verb, and they need us, you know, right? Because you'd want someone to stand up for you. So upstander strategies is asking clarifying questions, and you can come from a place of curiosity. So tell others about your experience, share, encourage others to consider the impact of their words and actions, and own your own response, and identify next steps and request appropriate action. All of these statements need to be I statements, right? It's because you don't want to create another dialogue between you and the offender, right? So you want to say, I noticed. How do you think that made people feel? When I heard your comment, I felt, and I appreciate if comments like those aren't said. And you can say this in your workplace today. You know, if you go back to the OR or GI or wherever you are, and something is said that makes you feel uncomfortable, use an I statement, because you know what? You'll be very impactful.
So creating a work environment that minimizes microaggressions. So these are really things that leadership is going to work on, but as team members, you definitely all have a space in this as well. So setting expectations for a safe learning or workplace environment, I really think that's what Debbie and Kelly are doing right now. Letting you guys know it is okay. If you hear something, if you hear somebody say something that's not okay, you can say, you know, like Debbie said, you know, that's not okay that you said that. If the offender gets upset with you, it's okay. They are gonna support you 100%, and that's creating a psychologically safe work environment. And the more safe everybody feels to speak up, the better the work environment we're gonna have. Encourage team members to speak up when they feel uncomfortable about a situation. It's exactly what we're talking about. Share your story so that others may feel more comfortable sharing their story. So if you have a situation where you were an ally, and you said something when somebody said something inappropriate, share that, and I think, these guys are working on ways to do follow-up to this in your upcoming staff meetings. So you'll have opportunities in a larger group, to share your experiences. Because when we hear that, others are doing this, it's gonna make us feel a whole lot more comfortable doing it ourselves. And then consistently encouraging and modeling, interrupting microaggression strategies, which is the handout, that we have in the back. So before we go to the next slide, are there any potential barriers that exist that could prevent this from becoming a reality in your work environment?
Can I speak freely?
Absolutely.
It's the power dynamic. I mean, everything you've stated there, anesthesia has said probably 100% of those things.
And one other thing, I like the microaggression also with us, that our patients are, or it might happen at the desk, I don't know, with outpatient or when they're under.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make
It's
it
not to the patient, it's to us, it's
Right.
Yep.
uncomfortable, it's.
Yep, no.
It's
Yep,
100% inappropriate.
Right,
Inappropriate.
because, the patient may not be hearing it, but there's somebody in the room that is probably gonna be taking offense to what's being said, so, I mean, how do you guys feel about?
I mean, there's been times where I'm like, what you just said is totally inappropriate, and I'm not judging everybody else, but like everyone just went. So then I felt like, oh shoot, I'm gonna be in trouble. But
No.
I mean, I wasn't, but it was
Yeah.
like, to be the only person who speaks up is uncomfortable.
Well, it's because it's new, right?
Right.
Not everybody is comfortable
Yeah.
doing that, so the more you do it, the more comfortable everybody is
Yeah.
gonna get doing it, and pretty soon,
And I'll be honest, the rest of the
anesthesiology
day,
is
yeah,
gonna realize
yeah.
that,
Well, and that
this is
person
not
owned it.
appropriate.
Later came in and was like, you were right.
Oh, that's
I was
good.
wrong.
That's really
Shouldn't have said
good.
it,
How do
and
you
that
say
was
it?
awesome.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
But I don't think others would be so
Yeah.
inward looking. But that's me judging it. Maybe they would be.
Thanks for sharing that.
But I think the more we hold each other up to that,
Mhm.
the more it's going to be, there'll be less and less of those people that
Yeah.
would use that. I feel like I've been doing this a long time and I saw some things, I heard some things that would not fly today. I mean, just look at old TV shows. I mean, things that are
Right.
talked about obviously are not okay. And I think as a culture, we're getting there, but we're taking baby steps, but,
When you know better, you do better.
yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So tying it all together, so we started talking about biases, right? So implicit biases are developed through exposure to stereotypes and other forms of misinformation over time. And those biases then lead well-intentioned people to commit microaggressions against folks in marginalized groups. As we were just speaking about, we all have the power to decide to speak up when something happens, whether it's in the workplace or not. Is the baby moving? So that's really, kind of putting the bow on the whole thing. Just a few other interesting facts. Based on our last site engagement scores, 1 out of 4 of our team members do not feel psychologically safe to speak up. So when you shared that, that wasn't surprising at all. And so, that's really what we want to work towards, is where everybody feels safe to speak up. Because we can't fix things if we don't know they exist. Speaking up evolves our culture, and that's really what this is about. We want a work culture where people want to come to work here, they want to stay here. We want our community to want to come here and to receive their care. And both team members and patients the demographics of the individuals that we're caring for continue to change. We're becoming a much more diverse community here in Sheboygan County. And so we want them to work here, we want them to seek their care here. And as team members, you play a key role in creating an environment where we all are empowered and feel safe to say something, step up, speak up. I know it's a bit of an eye chart on the right side too, but this information is all available on your Caregiver Connect, but there are a ton of resources that you can utilize to share concerns that you might have. We've got the compliance hotline being probably the most common. We've got safety event and clinical risk numbers, HR, of course, patient feedback related to care information, cybersecurity, civil rights. First of all, is your leaders. I would highly encourage, go to your leaders first, because I know these ladies are here for you. They are gonna help you. They're gonna walk you through whatever it is. They are not gonna steer you wrong. So actionable items are asks of your, be aware, keep your eyes and ears open, for those types of things that we wouldn't deem appropriate within, our facility, and then step up and speak up, be an ally, escalate issues as you see them. And that's not only DE&I issues, but safety issues and, all of the other things that are important to us here. Now is the time, I think it was Martin Luther King, it was his birthday last week, so there were a lot of quotes being shared, and one of his quotes is, "It's always the right time to do the right thing," or something to that effect. Tons of tools and resources are available. If you're looking for anything in particular, or there's a specific topic you want to learn more about, let Debbie or Kelly or Renee know, let me know. I'm happy to provide the resources that we have. And then just being accountable, holding yourself up and holding each other up, because your leaders are holding you accountable. Education, we grow from our discomfort, so Kelly and Debbie were not necessarily comfortable presenting this information.
We practiced a lot.
They practiced a lot, but when we met last week and we walked through it, I could tell the passion you guys have for this. You believe in it and you expect it. But sometimes talking about these topics isn't super comfortable, and that's okay, because we're not gonna grow if we don't try and move beyond that discomfort. And we're not gonna learn if we don't ask questions, so it's okay to ask people questions, ask your patients questions, or your new team members that your first meeting. Familiarize yourself with the internal and external resources. We've got DE&I sites, there's education on the leadership portal. All you have to do is a Google search on anything. If you want to learn more about LGBTQ, you just Google that, and there is more information out there than you can ever imagine. There's networks and groups in the community. The United Way put together a United Way challenge back in 2021, and I think it was like 21 weeks. Every Monday there was a different topic around DE&I, and there was an article to read, there was a video to watch, there were some reflection questions. It was really, really impactful, and if anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to share the link to that as well. And then lastly, and this is gonna be all of us at one point or another, if you're the person that's just been called out because you may have said something that's microaggression and you didn't realize it, just be humble. Thank them for the learning opportunity. Instead of bristling in defense or getting upset, I mean, that is a normal human reaction. But just think about what the other person has just said, hear them, reflect on it, thank them for their comment, and acknowledge that you listened. It is a moment to teach yourself, open up dialogue, and dig a little bit deeper. So a little humility goes a really long way.
So this next slide here is a repeat pretty much of kind of what you did, but the only two things I want to point out on here is that there's a DE&I intranet hub that is available, as well as emailing any questions to inclusion@aah.org. So kind of like Pam talked about, what are action steps? I want you guys to really reflect, think about, what are your blind spots? What are some of your biases that you have? How is that impacting patient care? Think about some of the unconscious biases as well that you have. And what Renee would like us to do is to kind of think about this over the next couple weeks, and that at our next quarterly meeting, we'll kind of discuss those and have some more education.
So what hurts the victim most is not the cruelty of the oppressor, but the silence of the bystander. That was written by a Holocaust survivor. So just think how that would have change if we would have had upstanders? Would it have happened? I mean,
But look how easily.
it
Yeah,
happened.
there's a
Right.
perfect example of groupthink.
Yep. Yep. I thought this was so powerful. That is it.
What questions do you guys have, comments?
Make sure you signed in because we need 100% everyone here, so we don't wanna have to have you come back unless you want to. Next week, maybe Kelly and I will just karaoke.
Yeah.
Take a handout, if you have any questions.
Thank you guys.
Okay.